Thelonious was with Bud, and they were on their way out of town. And Bud made a stop, I believe, and was seen by undercover police. And Thelonious took the drugs, whatever it was that Bud had, because Bud had had a lot of trouble. And Thelonious basically took the weight. But it did result in him losing his cabaret card.
When I got to know Monk, when Monk began working with us, it was just simply an established fact that he did not have a cabaret card, and that meant in New York City in those days that you could not work in any club or bar in New York.
I mean, he did come around to jam sessions. He was allowed to sit in. He did a lot of things unofficially, but officially he couldn't work to the extent that he should have been allowed to work. I think that this was a terribly racist thing that took place. It was done deliberately at one point, I feel, because too many black musicians were working downtown.
In the big picture, I don't know if it had as detrimental effect on his career as it had on his basic emotion as a person. I mean, not being allowed to ply your craft, not being allowed to earn a living in your hometown for your wife and your family has got to eat at anyone. But in that period is when Thelonious did a great deal of writing. He was home, my mother was working 2 and 3 jobs, and so consequently, Thelonious was playing Mr. Mom, and he was at the piano. It afforded him an opportunity to really concentrate on his writing.
See, when he signed with Riverside in the mid-50s, he had been recording for about 7 years for both Blue Note and Prestige, and had developed that reputation of being tremendously difficult to listen to, tremendously difficult to understand, and as a result had a very small cult following and no real acceptance as yet in the jazz world. So we began with, I thought it was fairly safe, and it was. I began by suggesting an all Ellington album. Another trio album involving standards, and then I guess we felt that we and the world were ready to tackle Monk playing his own material with horns, and that was the third Riverside album was the Brilliant Corners album with Sonny Rollins, which is the first Monk album for me that made a big splash.
We lived in a very, very tiny apartment in the beginning, and I know we spent a lot of time in the bed together, all 4 of us. It was remarkable. I could lay in the bed with my dad until I was about 10 years old. I mean, anytime you might walk in the house and you might find all 4 of us on the bed playing cards, or because my father and mother were big on games. They liked to play all kinds of card games, you know, all the time. And of course, you know, Thelonious was excellent ping pong player and absolutely extraordinary pool player. So he was big on games. He liked that competitive little thing. But we played games a lot. But it was we were very, very close-knit family. You know, Thelonious took me and my mother and my sister out on the road with him a lot, you know, in the latter years. He really liked that. My mother always. And now when I think about it in retrospect, I know he was going through great changes to make it possible for us to do these things because he wasn't making that much money.
I met Nika in about 1954 or 55, and I've always thought of the Baroness as being possibly the only example in our times of sort of the modern version of the medieval patron of the arts. I mean, I think she was a true patroness and was extremely helpful to quite a number of musicians, of whom, you know, the most notable were Bird and Monk.
All the musicians would always go to her place and whatnot. She'd always be around. I think perhaps that the Baroness realized what a genius this man was, you know, and probably just, she had that sense, that timing, to realize that this was a master. And maybe that was the contribution that she was supposed to make. The Fire Spot was kind of a unique place. It was just an ordinary bar near 5th Street and 3rd Avenue. And it had an upright piano originally. In fact, the first time they got a grand piano was when Monk came in. And I don't know what it was about this place. It just had a certain kind of spirit. It certainly wasn't the most beautiful club in the world. It was just about as basic a bar as you could find. And it just became the place. And Monk was very popular there.
First time I saw Thelonious was the old 5 Spot. It was the band with John Coltrane, Shadow Wilson, and Wilbur Ware. And I guess this was the most awesome quartet that I'd heard in my life. Going there from 9 to 4 every night that they worked. I was sitting in there or standing outside listening to 4 great musicians. Really fantastic for me.
And Monk's music was such a challenge for John Coltrane, and he could take it to another sphere. As you know, Train was incredible, and here the two of them together down the 5 Spot, oh, it was awesome, awesome. Because Monk would just feed you them funny chords, you know, and give you all that space, and Train would fill that space up with all kinds of stuff. So it was a natural marriage between the two, natural.
Look here, Coltrane practiced Monk tunes, Sonny Rollins practiced Monk tunes, and they practiced these tunes. They practiced playing these songs. You did not necessarily come up and look at some Monk changes and play the song. You know, see, Monk was that kind of way, period, man. I tell you, it's a song Monk played. It's an old standard Monk played called Lulu's Back in Town. You know, gotta get my old tuxedo press. Gotta sew a button on my vest, cause tonight I gotta look my best. Lulu's back in town. Man, let me tell you, I heard Monk practicing that song. He played that tune in tempo and practiced that song for maybe 2 hours. The average pianist, I doubt if there's a pianist. I know myself, if you could sit and play a tune yourself in tempo and do it for an hour, I don't think there are too many cats that can do it. You know, so he was very special that way. The most exciting moment for me with Monk came at the Vanguard. There was one day when he refused to play any of his songs. And so he played all standards. And then, that's when one really knew the truth about Monk then.
What was it?
Ugh. See, it didn't matter what Monk played. I saw Monk sit down at the piano and read a sheet of music, note for note, and that sounded like Monk. You see?
The new Fired Spot on 8th Street is the first chance I got an opportunity to be around him every night. For 6 weeks, I worked opposite him, and I was with 3 different trios. This was about 64. So Thelonious came in the room after the third week he was there. No, the 6th week we were there, the last week. And he looked up at the stage, and I'm working with the new. So he walked over to me and said, "Who the hell are you, the house drummer?" And kept going. And that was the first words he had spoken to me for 6 weeks. So that Monday, we closed on Sunday, and that Monday, I got a phone call at about 8 in the morning saying, "We'd like you to come down to Columbia because Mr. Monk is recording, and we'd like you to come down." I hung up. So the phone rang again, and he said, "Oh, this is no joke. We're down here at Columbia Studio waiting for you." So I went down, and there they were. So we did this date, which he never said nothing to me. Again, I walked in, he never said good morning, he said nothing. I put the drums up, and after I got everything set and he saw that I was ready, he started playing. He still hasn't said a word to me. So we finished this whole half an album, and while we listened to the playback, he walked over to me and said, "Would you like some money?" I said, "No, I'll wait for the check." He said, "I don't want anybody in my band being broke." So I said, "In your band?" He said, "Yes, do you have your passport ready?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, we're leaving Friday." And I was in the band.
There are 2 numbers which I personally call masterpieces. Et ce sont Roundabout Midnight et Crepuscule with Nelly. Nous avons demandé à Monk laquelle de toutes ces compositions il considère la meilleure.
I don't know. I haven't really rated them. I mean, within my mind.
Well, then, which is the one you like best to play?
I like all of them.
Non, il ne sait pas laquelle est la meilleure, et il ne sait pas laquelle il préfère jouer non plus. I mean, they're all good.
Well, I expect them to be a certain standard, unless before I let anybody hear it.
You mean everything you write is stamped with genius?
I don't know about that.
No, because I'm cornering you.
He was very witty and a very sensitive person, and in a way, for me, I believe that's why a lot of times he gave you these different airs and these different little gestures that he would do because he didn't want you to get close to him because of him being a very sensitive person. He was a very sensitive person.
When I finally discovered Thelonious, I went to his house. After hearing him the second time, I went by and asked him, could I come by to see him? And he said, yes. I went by his house. And I was in his house about 9 hours. I'll never forget this because he had a picture of Billie Holiday in the ceiling. And he had a red light and a small piano. So, being a young musician, I started to ask him a lot of questions. He didn't answer any question at all. And I must have stayed there about maybe 1 hour asking him questions. He never said anything, you know. I stayed inside that room close to 9 hours, just with him. All of a sudden, it got very quiet, it got very silent. And finally, I said, well, Mr. Monk, thanks very much for inviting me. You know, I think I better leave, right? He said, okay, come by and see me again. And I left, and I was completely perplexed, see. When I went back to see him again a month later, he played the piano almost 2 or 3 hours for me. Then I realized, because I've done a lot of reading of Sufism and mysticism, and I realized in the ancient cultures, a lot of the masters, they communicate without words, you see. And Monk was a master of that. When I hear Monk play, it's like hearing Mahalia Jackson sing. It's like hearing Billie Holiday sing. There's a certain quality when the music just reaches you someplace else. Not just the ears, but it reaches inside the spirit, you know. And that Round Midnight has that kind of quality. Our music is a music of conversation. And for Louis Armstrong, when he played his trumpet, he was talking. He was really speaking. When we hear the blues, it's really a language, a musical language of communication. And Monk was a master of that. So he could make one of those funny runs. He would start up here at the top of the piano, and a half hour later, he would get to the bottom. Now, you try to follow that trip with him going down the keyboard. It's incredible. Watched him and saw him and heard him. It was not just the melodies and the notes and the sounds and the colors, but it was a kind of a wonderful commitment, you know, that this is what I'm going to say. This is my music, and I'm going to keep doing that, you know. Not only is Monk such a master pianist and composer, but when you watch him play, he does a complete ballet. He doesn't play the piano, but he puts his whole body into the piano. And when Monk hits something up here or something down there, his whole body, so like it's a whole dance.
Dancing was funny. When this music was happening, then he'd get up and do his little dancing because he was feeling good and he knew you knew where you were and the music was swinging and that's what he wanted. So he said, I don't have to play now, you making it happen.
My association with jazz is at dance halls. You know, we gave dances. People danced to the music. When you went to the Bird, you was at a dance. When you went to hear anything, if you went to hear Stan Kenton's band, it was at a dance. If you heard Duke Ellington's band, it was at a dance. So that dancing was part of the music. And I think Monk sort of knew this some kind of way because Monk had his own little shuffle. And he'd get up and dance while Charlie Rouse played. And the minute Charlie Rouse stopped his solo, Monk was at the piano playing. That means instantly, right into it, you know, no pause, no. The dancing was a part of the piano playing. He was way ahead when it came to the difference that distinguishes the Van Gogh from the common, or distinguishes the greats, you know. And Monk was the great, you know. And how he learned it, I can't tell you. I don't know how a person could do it that early. You know, that was a genius. That's all. Genius is funny. You know.
In 1964, when the Time article came out, I think finally he understood that there were a number of people very interested in what he was playing and what he was doing. I think it made him play more because now he knew people were listening to him. So there was a great enthusiasm when we went out to work that he had, because now he knew that he could see in person people standing in line waiting to come in to hear him play. And then we were traveling quite a bit. We went on 2 world tours. And things were really, really looking good. he was a very sensitive, I can say, a very sensitive person, a very knowledgeable person. And I think a lot of things happened to him that he held within. He never would release them. And I think in the end, it finally caught up with him, you know.
Although Monk, he reached a point where he was doing the concerts, he toured, he was very popular, but I just got the impression that the surroundings of the music didn't move with the music, you know. You see what I mean? You had this tremendous music, but they just weren't the places I felt that somebody like Monk should have had a place to play. It was fabulous. The best piano, the best conditions, best sound, everything, you know. And I felt it wasn't there. And I could be wrong, and I felt spiritually that he just shut the door and said, okay, I've given this much. And he gave a lot, you know. I said, okay, this is for you, you know. I've stopped.
That's all. He just said he didn't feel like playing, so he stopped. You know, if he say something, he just say it, but he don't go into details to tell you why or anything. I guess he didn't know why himself when he didn't feel good. We went over to see him a few times, and he'd walk around with us. He'd go out and take walks, but he didn't feel like playing or appearing in front of the public. He came out one time, I forgot when that was, in the 70s or something, and played, but then he didn't come back again after that.
I would go back to the fact that the group Sphere that I was involved with, well, our first album was a dedication to Thelonious. And the music that we wanted to play was his music, and we decided that maybe if this album was good enough, it would encourage him to return to playing again. But the day that we went in to record, he passed away that morning while we were in the studio, so he never had a chance to hear the music.
I think Monk was he was a part of a golden era of the music, you know. There was a golden era of the music, and like all golden eras, they come to an end. And so you have to go through a certain period before there's a renaissance.
He gave so much, and he had to make great sacrifices to give what he gave, because he never compromised his music. You see, some composers, some musicians, they say, well, okay, I'm gonna do this because this is gonna make me some money, you know. But Monk was almost like a prophet. He was here for a reason. He was here to bring us all this beauty, all this love to the world. And he couldn't compromise. He didn't know how.